The battle lasted 18 hours. What had begun as a swift victory for Earth's forces turned into a grueling test of endurance, as the hegemony vessel revealed hidden defensive capabilities. Emergency power systems had activated, secondary weapons had come online, and the alien crew fought with the desperate energy of those who never expected defeat. But now, as Earth completed another rotation, the fighting finally ceased. The hegemony ship floated in orbit, crippled but intact, surrounded by the 5 dreadnoughts in a display of power that couldn't be misinterpreted by anyone watching. On the Defiance Bridge, Captain John Richards looked exhausted but triumphant. His uniform was wrinkled from the long hours at his post, and a small cut on his forehead had dried without treatment, a souvenir from when an alien missile had briefly overwhelmed their shields and rocked the ship. "Open a channel to Ambassador Zex," he ordered, his voice hoarse from giving commands throughout the night. Lieutenant Maria Gonzalez nodded. "Channel open, sir." John straightened in his chair, knowing that his image would be transmitted not only to the alien vessel but to screens across Earth. Billions were watching this moment. "Ambassador Zex," he began formally, "your vessel is disabled. Your weapons are neutralized. Your fighters have been destroyed or captured. Do you wish to continue this engagement, or are you prepared to discuss new terms?" In the United Nations headquarters, President Martinez and world leaders watched the exchange on a massive screen, hardly daring to breathe. The room was silent except for the occasional cough or rustle of papers. These men and women had gambled humanity's future on the dreadnoughts. Now they waited to see if their bet would pay off. After a long pause, Ambassador Zex appeared on screen. His appearance shocked many who had not seen the initial transmission. The once proud alien looked diminished. One of his facial ridges was damaged, leaking a silvery fluid that he periodically wiped away. The lighting on his bridge was dim, suggesting power conservation. "It seems we have underestimated your species, Captain Richards," Zex said, his voice carrying a new note of caution. "A common mistake, Ambassador," Richards replied evenly. "One I suggest the hegemony not repeat." John leaned forward slightly. "Here are our terms. You will leave this solar system immediately. You will inform the hegemony that Earth and all planets in our system are sovereign territory, not to be approached or interfered with. Any future diplomatic contact will be initiated by us, not by you. Any further aggression will be met with the full force of our fleet." Across Earth, people held their breath. Many worried that the terms were too harsh, that the aliens might choose destruction over such a humiliating retreat. "The hegemony does not retreat," Zex began, his damaged facial ridge pulsing weakly with light. "We have never—" "Ambassador," Captain Lisa Brown cut in from the Intrepid, her face appearing alongside John's in the transmission. "Our scans indicate your ship still has minimal life support and enough propulsion for a slow journey home. That can change with one word from any of our captains." The threat hung in space between them, unspoken but clear. "Accept the terms, or be destroyed." After a long pause, during which the ambassador appeared to consult with others off-screen, Zex nodded stiffly. "I will convey your request to the Hegemony Council." "One more thing," Richards added. "We're sending you data on our 5 vessels. Make sure your council understands these are merely our first-generation dreadnoughts. The second generation is already under construction, with improvements based on what we've learned from this encounter." This was a bluff. Earth had thrown everything it had into these 5 ships, but Zex couldn't know that. The alien's damaged ridge flickered as he processed this information. "Understood," the ambassador replied, his voice tight with controlled anger and humiliation. "You have 6 hours to make necessary repairs for your journey," John concluded. 2 of our vessels will escort you to the edge of our solar system to ensure you find your way home without detours." The transmission ended, and for a moment, silence reigned on the Defiance Bridge. Then, as if a dam had broken, cheers erupted. Officers hugged one another, some crying openly with relief. John allowed it for 30 seconds before raising his hand for quiet. "We've won the battle," he reminded them soberly. "But this is just the beginning. The hegemony now knows we exist, and they won't underestimate us next time. Our real work starts now. 24 hours later, the damaged hegemony ship limped away from Earth, its engines glowing weakly as it struggled to build speed. The Defiant and the Intrepid flanked it at a respectful distance, weapons visibly ready but not targeting. Captain John Richards and Captain Lisa Brown stood side by side on the Defiant's observation deck, watching the alien vessel shrink into the distance. "Do you think they'll abide by the terms?" Lisa asked quietly. "For now," John replied. "They're practical enough to retreat when beaten, but they'll be back eventually, and with a much larger force." Lisa nodded grimly. "Then we'd better be ready." On the International Space Station, Commander Alan Shepard and Lieutenant Samantha Wright had front-row seats to the departure. Through the observation window, they could see all three ships, the alien vessel and its two Earth escorts, as tiny points of light moving steadily away from their homeworld. "I still can't believe we won," Samantha said, her voice filled with wonder. "When that ship first appeared, I thought it was the end." "Not the end," Alan replied. "Just the beginning. Space isn't going to be the empty frontier we thought it was." Below them, Earth continued its peaceful rotation, looking deceptively unchanged. But everything had transformed. Humans would never again look at the stars with innocent curiosity. They now knew with certainty that they weren't alone, and that not everything in the cosmos was friendly. In homes and public squares across the planet, people celebrated their unexpected victory. Religious leaders claimed divine intervention, scientists studied the footage of the battle for technological insights, and military strategists debated the tactics used. But beneath the celebration ran a current of determination. Humanity had glimpsed its future and understood that survival would require unity and purpose like never before. In a secure conference room beneath the Pentagon, President Martinez met with the 5 dreadnought captains and key military leaders. The room was soundproofed, swept for listening devices, and guarded by elite soldiers. The secrets discussed here would determine Earth's future. "You've given humanity a chance," she told the assembled group, her eyes showing the fatigue of sleepless nights but also burning with determination. "But this is just the beginning. The hegemony now knows we exist and they won't underestimate us again." Captain John Richards nodded. "Then we'd better make sure our bluff about more dreadnoughts becomes reality." "Already in progress," General Miller said, sliding a folder across the table. "Construction begins next month on 10 second-generation vessels. We're incorporating everything we learned from this battle." Captain Lisa Brown picked up the folder, a slight smile on her face as she reviewed the specifications. "These are impressive. Twice the firepower, improved shields, and faster propulsion." "And where will we find the crews?" asked Captain Grace. "Kim. Training takes years. Recruitment has already begun," the president answered. "After what the world just witnessed, we have volunteers lining up around the block. Every nation is contributing their best and brightest." "What about reverse engineering the technology from the alien fighters we captured?" Captain Daniel Jackson inquired. "Our own craft performed well, but we could learn a lot from having intact enemy vessels to study. The research teams are already taking them apart piece by piece," General Miller confirmed. "Preliminary reports suggest we might be able to improve our propulsion systems by at least 30%. Commander Carlos Mendez looked thoughtful. "The hegemony thought Earth was weak. Now they know better." "And if they forget," Daniel Jackson added quietly, "our dreadnoughts will remind them." President Martinez stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "Humanity just survived its first interstellar crisis. There will be more to come, but thanks to you, all of you, we'll face them as a united planet, not as scattered nations." As the group filed out, John Richards paused at the window. Outside, the first stars were becoming visible in the evening sky. They no longer represented just beauty and mystery. They were destinations, potential threats, and possible allies. And humanity was finally ready to take its place among them. "They thought Earth was weak," he murmured to himself. "Their mistake." Behind him, Captain Lisa Brown paused. Won't be the last alien species to make that mistake, she said with a slight smile. But they'll all learn eventually. John nodded, turning away from the window. Yes, they will. One way or another. Together, they walked out to prepare humanity for its new role in a much larger, more dangerous, and more amazing universe than anyone had imagined just days before. The end. Admiral Diane Powell wiped sweat from her brow as she walked onto the bridge of the UES Harbinger. Red alert lights flashed across the walls. The ship hummed with nervous energy. She was 55, with gray hair and a face marked by years of battle. Her blue uniform bore the scars of 15 years of war against the Kraxan Dominion. She stepped up to the main view screen. Stars shone against the blackness of space. Somewhere out there, the enemy was coming. "How many ships do we have?" she asked. Lieutenant Pete Davis looked up from his screen. 342 ships ready for battle, Admiral. All crews at battle stations. Powell nodded. This was it. After years of running and hiding, of watching human colonies burn, they would make a stand here at Arcturus. Not just any stand. Their first real attack. "And Project Starburst?" she asked, using the code name that ordinary crew members knew. Commander Kate Russell stepped forward. "Ready to deploy, Admiral. Dr. Harris says the weapon is fully charged." She lowered her voice. "This is our one shot. If it fails..." Powell placed a hand on the commander's shoulder. "It won't fail. It can't." Project Starburst, or Project Singularity, as the scientists called it, had taken 10 years to build. It had drained resources from 3 planets. It had cost billions of lives in the colonies that fell while Earth focused on building this one weapon. If it failed, humanity was finished. "Enemy ships detected," called out Officer Sam Wilson from the sensor station. His young face paled as data scrolled across his screen. 817 Kraxan vessels approaching. Their energy signatures match battleships and destroyers. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what those numbers meant. The enemy had twice their firepower. In a normal battle, humans wouldn't stand a chance. But this wasn't going to be a normal battle. "Put me through to the fleet," Powell said. The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Powell took a deep breath. The words she spoke now would reach every human ship, every soldier and pilot ready to fight and die. "This is Admiral Powell. For 15 years we've watched the Kraxan burn our worlds. We've seen them kill our families. We've had to retreat again and again." On the main screen, the enemy fleet appeared. Black ships shaped like arrowheads lined up in perfect rows. Each one carried weapons that could slice through human shields like paper. "Today, that ends," Powell continued, her voice growing stronger. "Today we stop running. Today we show these aliens that humanity doesn't break. We bend, we bleed, but we do not break." She clenched her fist at her side where no one could see it. "Each of you knows someone who died in this war. A friend. A loved one. Today we fight for them, and today we have a real chance to win." She looked around at her bridge crew. Young faces, scared faces, determined faces. "All ships, maintain position. Hold steady." The Kraxan ships moved closer, their formation perfect. They had no fear. Why would they? They had won every major battle for 15 years. Powell's hand moved to her neck, touching the small silver locket hidden under her uniform. Inside was a photo of her daughter Lisa, killed when the Kraxan attacked Mars colony. Powell had been fighting this war ever since, climbing the ranks, surviving when others didn't. Captain Jack Freeman looked up from his tactical station. "Admiral, the enemy ships are charging weapons. They'll be in firing range in 60 seconds. Powell nodded calmly. "Let them come." The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut with a knife. Some officers whispered quiet prayers. Others stared silently at their stations. They all knew the plan. They all knew what was supposed to happen. But none of them truly believed it would work. None except Powell. Officer Emma Lee spoke up from her communications post. "Admiral, UES Hyperion reports Project Starburst is ready for activation. Dr. Harris awaits your command." "Good, Powell. said. Tell all ships to prepare for Event Horizon protocols. Every ship in the human fleet had been equipped with special shields, not to protect against cracks on weapons, but to shield them from what was about to happen. Enemy ships spreading out into attack formation, reported Wilson. They're forward. Batteries are hot. 30 seconds to firing range. On the screen, the black Kraxan ships began to shift positions. Their formation changed from a simple wall to a complex web, designed to surround and destroy the human fleet. They think they know what's coming, Powell said quietly. They think this is just another battle. 20 seconds, Wilson called. Powell straightened her uniform. All ships, activate Event Horizon shields. Across the human fleet, special energy fields hummed to life. These weren't designed to stop enemy weapons. They had a different purpose entirely. 10 seconds to enemy firing. Range! At the center of the human formation, one ship stood apart from the others. The UES Hyperion wasn't a warship. It was a science vessel built around a single device. A weapon unlike any other in human history. 5 seconds. The Kraxan ship's weapon ports began to glow with purple energy. In moments they would unleash hell upon the human fleet. Powell took a final breath and gave the order that would change the course of the war forever. Execute Operation Daybreak. Now. Aboard the UES Hyperion, Dr. Elijah Harris sat surrounded by screens and blinking lights. The skinny scientist hadn't slept in 3 days. His hands shook as he typed commands into his computer. Singularity core powering up, he said to his team of 20 scientists. All systems check. The Hyperion wasn't built for battle. It was a science ship built around one thing, the most dangerous weapon humans had ever made. For 10 years, Harris and his team had worked to build it. Many said it was impossible. Harris had proved them wrong. Kraxan ships are approaching firing range, said Natalie Kim, Harris's assistant. Her voice shook with fear. They'll fire any second now. Harris nodded and wiped his glasses on his lab coat. The Singularity is stable, field generators aligned and ready. On his main screen he could see the enemy ships, hundreds of them moving into position to destroy what was left of humanity's fleet. The Kraxan were confident. They had won every battle so far. They thought they knew what humans could do. They were wrong. Harris opened a channel to the fleet admiral. Admiral Powell, Singularity device is ready, awaiting your command. Powell's face appeared on his screen. Are you sure this will work, Doctor? There's no room for error. Harris wanted to lie and say yes, he was sure, but the truth was more complicated. The math checks out, Admiral. The tests were successful, but we've never used it at this scale before. Powell's face showed no emotion. It has to work, Doctor. We're out of options. I understand, Harris said. Singularity device ready on your mark. He heard Powell give the command. Execute Operation Daybreak, now. Harris pressed his hand against the activation panel. Engaging Singularity field. The ship hummed with power as the core came online. Between the human and Kraxan fleets, space itself began to change. It looked like ripples on water, a perfect circle that grew larger by the second. Field stable and expanding, reported Kim, her eyes wide with wonder. All readings normal. The ripple moved toward the Kraxan ships at the speed of light. There was no way for them to escape it. The first line of enemy ships touched the edge of the field, and they vanished, not exploded, not damaged. They simply disappeared from existence. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, as if they had never been there at all. It's working, someone shouted. Harris stared at his screens in shock. The field continued to spread through the enemy fleet. Ship after ship vanished from existence. The massive Kraxan flagship, a monster of a vessel nearly 10 miles long, touched the edge of the field and disappeared instantly. In less than a minute, all 817 enemy ships were gone. Harris couldn't believe his eyes. Field, dissipating as planned, he said, his voice barely a whisper. No Kraxan signatures detected. Admiral Powell's voice came through the comm. Dr. Harris, I need to know what just happened. Where did they go? Harris looked at his data, trying to make sense of what they had just done. The weapon had worked better than he had dared to hope. "They went nowhere, Admiral," he said at last. "Because they no longer exist." 3 days after the Battle of Arcturus, Admiral Powell sat in a bright meeting room on Earth's main space station. 20 important people sat around a long table: military leaders, scientists, and government officials. At the head of the table sat President Susan Miller, a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes. "So let me understand this," President Miller said, leaning forward. "You didn't destroy the enemy fleet. You erased it?" Dr. Harris nodded. He looked tired but excited. "The Singularity device creates a special field that changes how physics works. Inside that field, matter can't stay together. The ships didn't explode because there was no energy release. They just disappeared at the most basic level." "And the Kraxan aliens themselves?" asked John Baker, the defense secretary. "Are they dead?" Harris paused, searching for the right words. "They're not dead in any normal way. They're just gone. The matter that made them doesn't exist in our universe anymore." The room went quiet as everyone thought about what that meant. "We've checked everything," Admiral Powell added. "No debris, no radiation, no particles. 817 ships, including their main flagship, and about 3 million Kraxan soldiers gone in less than a minute." President Miller took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. This raises big questions. Moral questions." "With respect, Madam President," Powell said firmly, "the Kraxan didn't care about morals when they attacked us. They've destroyed 17 colonies and killed over 2 billion humans." "I'm not saying we were wrong to use it," Miller replied. "I'm worried about what this means for us, for humans, going forward. This weapon doesn't just kill, it erases. That's different." Dr. Harris cleared his throat. "The weapon has limits, Madam President. It needs huge amounts of power. The Hyperion's reactor was completely drained after one use, and the field only moves at light speed, so it won't work against ships that can jump to faster-than-light travel unless they're surprised, which means it only really works in a big battle when the enemy is already fighting," Admiral Powell added. "It's not something we can use for every situation." The president nodded slowly. "What are the Kraxan doing now? How have they responded?" Frank Rivera, the head of intelligence, looked at his tablet. "They're confused and scared. Their communication systems are full of emergency messages. They don't understand what happened at Arcturus. Several of their fleets have been called back to protect their home worlds." "They're afraid," said Powell with a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "As they should be," Baker muttered. President Miller stood up and walked to the window that looked out over Earth's blue-green surface. "Have you seen any messages suggesting they might want to talk peace?" Rivera shook his head. "Nothing clear yet. But this is the first big defeat they've had in this war. It might take time for them to process what happened." "We've learned more about how their government works," added Baker. "Their leaders seem divided on whether the war was a good idea. This defeat might give more power to the ones who want peace." Miller turned back to the group. "Then we have a chance here. Admiral Powell, I want the Singularity device ready for another demonstration, but don't use it without my direct permission." "Understood, Madam President." "Dr. Harris, how long until we can build more of these devices?" Harris thought for a moment. "If we use all our resources, maybe 3 months for the next one. We can work faster now that we know it works." Miller nodded firmly. "Start building more immediately, but at the same time, I want to prepare a peace offer. We'll reach out to the moderate factions in the Kraxan leadership." She looked around the table. "Our message will be simple. We have a weapon that can make their fleets vanish, and we will use it if we have to. But we would prefer peace." "And if they refuse?" asked Powell. Miller's face hardened. "Then we'll do what we must to protect humanity. But let's be clear, our goal isn't to wipe out the Kraxan. It's peace, on terms that keep us safe." As the meeting ended, Admiral Powell walked with Dr. Harris in the hallway outside. "Do you think it will work?" she asked quietly. "The peace plan, I mean." Harris thought about it. The Kraxan always thought they were better than us with better technology. That belief is gone now. They're practical, under all their aggression. He shrugged. I think they'll look at the facts and choose to survive. Powell nodded. I hope you're right, because if talking fails, we're going to change war forever. 6 weeks after the Battle of Arcturus, 3 Kraxan patrol ships entered the outer rim of the Sirius system. They moved cautiously, their sensors scanning for human defenses. Earth had sent peace messages to the Kraxan leadership, but so far, there had been no official response. Admiral Powell stood on the bridge of the UES Harbinger, watching the enemy ships on the main screen. They're scanning the colony, reported Lieutenant Davis. Standard patrol formation. Powell nodded. Sirius colony had been abandoned early in the war. The Kraxan didn't know that. They thought they were doing a regular scout mission of a human outpost. Is the Hyperion in position? Powell asked. Commander Russell checked her screen. Yes, Admiral. Dr. Harris reports the second singularity device is charged and ready. After the success at Arcturus, Earth had rushed to build more singularity devices. The first new one had been installed on a small, stealthy ship hidden behind Sirius's 4th planet. The Kraxan patrol couldn't detect it. President Miller's orders had been clear. No attacks on Kraxan civilian targets. But military patrols were fair game for the demonstration Earth needed to make. Open a channel to the Kraxan ships, Powell ordered. Officer Lee nodded. Channel open, Admiral. Powell took a deep breath. Attention, Kraxan vessels. This is Admiral Diane Powell of the United Earth Fleet. You are trespassing in human space. We have sent peace messages to your leadership. This is your only warning. Leave this system immediately or face the consequences. The bridge crew watched and waited. Would the Kraxan respond? Or would they attack, as they always had before? Admiral, we're getting a response, Lee said with surprise in her voice. On screen, Powell ordered. The image of a Kraxan commander appeared. The alien had dark blue scales and 4 yellow eyes. Its pointed teeth showed as it spoke. Human Admiral. The translation computer converted its harsh sounds to English. Your peace messages are being considered by the High Council. But until orders change, we continue our mission. This system belongs to the Dominion now. Your warning is rejected. The screen went dark. Powell sighed. She had expected this, but she had hoped for better. They've made their choice. Inform the Hyperion to prepare for activation. Yes, Admiral, said Russell. On the stealthy ship, Dr. Harris and a small team monitored the singularity device. This version was smaller than the first, designed to affect a specific target rather than an entire fleet. Target locked, reported Kim. The lead Kraxan vessel is in optimal range. Harris nodded. Powering up Singularity Core. Back on the Harbinger, Powell watched as the Kraxan ships began moving toward the colony. Their weapon systems were powering up. They're preparing to attack the colony's defensive systems, Davis reported. Powell nodded. Send the activation code to the Hyperion. A simple text message was transmitted. Execute. In space near Sirius's 4th planet, the singularity field activated. A small ripple formed in space, moving at light speed toward the lead Kraxan ship. The aliens had no warning, no time to react. The ripple touched the lead ship and it vanished. The 2 remaining Kraxan vessels immediately changed course, their engines flaring as they tried to escape whatever had just erased their companion. Hyperion. Report successful deployment, Russell announced. 1 target eliminated. Powell nodded. Open a channel to the remaining ships. When the channel was open, Powell spoke firmly. Kraxan vessels, you have witnessed our power. 1 of your ships is gone, not destroyed, erased from existence. We can do the same to your entire fleet, your bases, your military. But we don't want to. We want peace. There was a long silence. Finally, one of the Kraxan commanders responded. What did you do to the other ship? The translation couldn't hide the fear in the alien's voice. The same thing we did to your fleet at Arcturus, Powell replied. Your ships, your people, they no longer exist in this universe. We have more of these weapons now. We could use them on your homeworlds, but we choose not to. We choose to offer peace instead. The Kraxan commander's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. I must report this to the High Council. Do that, Powell said. Tell them we will send a diplomatic ship to the neutral zone in 1 week. We expect representatives with authority to discuss peace terms. The Kraxan ships quickly turned and jumped to faster-than-light speed, fleeing the system. Powell exhaled slowly. And now we wait. Dr. Harris contacted the Harbinger from the Hyperion. Admiral, the device worked perfectly. The targeted field eliminated only the lead ship. The others weren't affected. Good work, Doctor, Powell replied. This more precise version will be useful. Harris nodded. But I hope we don't need to use it again. Over the next few days, Earth's intelligence network detected a surge of activity in Kraxan space. Their fleets were moving, but not toward human systems. They were pulling back, forming defensive lines around their core worlds. 5 days after the serious incident, a message arrived from the Kraxan High Council. They've agreed to send representatives to the neutral zone, President Miller told Admiral Powell during their secure call. They want to discuss what they call terms of coexistence. Powell raised an eyebrow. That's not surrender, but it's a start. It's more than we've ever gotten from them, Miller replied. The singularity device has changed everything. They know they can't win now. What are our terms going to be? Powell asked. Return of all human prisoners, withdrawal from our colonies, recognition of our territorial rights. Miller listed. We won't demand reparations. That would just continue the conflict. We want a clean break, a fresh start. Powell nodded. And the singularity technology? Miller's expression grew serious. That stays our secret. It's the only thing keeping them honest. After the call ended, Powell stood by the viewport on the Harbinger, looking out at the stars. For 15 years, humanity had been on the brink of extinction. Now, in the span of weeks, everything had changed. A small group of scientists had found a way to change the rules of war itself. They hadn't built a bigger gun or a stronger shield. They had found a way to manipulate reality itself. Powell wondered what that would mean for humanity's future. Such power could protect them or corrupt them. It would depend on the choices they made going forward. But for now, the most important thing was that humanity would have a future at all.